Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today I want to discuss one of the more difficult lessons that I've had to learn when dealing with a long-term game group, and that's player compatibility. Essentially, there's just some people that you can't and probably shouldn't play with. I've done several videos on bad player behavior and bad game master behavior, and with those we can point our finger at some specific trait or action and say that this person is doing something wrong. But with this, that's not the case. It doesn't have to be anyone's fault. There's no real person to blame for why we're having issues in the group. It could be a simple conflict of personalities, not in the manner where one or both of the parties are being dicks, just a conflict of personalities. It's just that they don't get along or they don't mesh right, and that's causing some sort of hitch or some sort of friction in the group, and that's not just hurting their enjoyment of the game, but everybody else's enjoyment of the game. It could just be a conflict of tastes. Maybe one of the players wants high roleplay and political intrigue, while the rest of the group wants high action and adventure. Maybe one person wants fantasy, while everybody else wants to be playing sci-fi. They might even be polite about it, going along with whatever the rest of the group wants, but they're still unhappy to be playing something that they don't really want to play, and that unhappiness is causing issues not just for them, but for the rest of the group. Now, you really can't blame them for playing a game that they might not really be enjoying that much if they'd rather be playing something else. At least not really. You can't blame them if they're at least attempting to go along with it and they're not being dicks about it. Normally, something like that, where a player or players don't like the game system or the genre of the game, they're going to voice their opinion. It's probably not going to be a mystery to everybody in the room that they'd prefer to be playing something else.
Guys, I know you're enjoying this game and all, but I'd like something with a bit more crunch and like machine guns and maybe some elves.
In which case, the rest of the group might change over to some different type of game that unhappy player would prefer to play, or the unhappy player might just up and leave the group because they don't want to play this game that everybody else is enjoying, or they can come to some sort of agreement or arrangement between them, or maybe after a few sessions they switch over to a different game, or some sort of compromise like that leaves everybody happy with the situation. However, sometimes the situation is a little bit harder to identify than that. You might know that there's a problem going on in the group, but knowing the source of that problem is where it gets tricky. We can misidentify this by symptoms that look on the outside like other issues, such as that player who never pays attention or is always on their phone or seems to be more interested in chatting with everybody and other stuff than actually playing the game. Or that one player who can never ever seem to learn the rules no matter how long you've been playing, they still don't know what dice to use. Or that one who never prepares for the game, such as the player who waits until the start of a session before they even begin pondering what new proficiency or feat or spell that is that they want to pick up now that they gained that new level at the end of the last session. Or the game master who shows up having done zero prep and not given a single thought as to what the characters are going to be doing this adventure or even where in the hell the characters are. I've touched on all of those in previous videos, and some commenters are pretty quick to say,
well, you can't blame them for that. It's most likely that they have a learning disability.
Or it's just the GM's fault. Everybody knows that when players misbehave, it's really just their response to a bad game master. Well, either of those might be the case. Instead of just blanket shifting the blame onto somebody else in the group, or just kind of saying that that person has some sort of mental deficiency, the real source of the problem might be a lot simpler than that, and that is a difference in priorities. There are a lot of reasons why we play these games, but two of the biggest reasons are a love of the game itself, the dice and the world, the problem solving, and just the simple joy of playing, and then there's the love of the group, the social aspect. We're hanging out with our friends, either in person or online, and the people who make up the game are what keeps us coming back session after session. So the source of the problem that you might be having with that player is just simply that their priority, their entire reason for coming to the game itself might be different than everybody else's. Maybe they put all their weight in the game itself. They don't care about making friends. Hell, they might not even like the other players. They don't want small talk. They don't want to hang out once the session is done. They came here to play. So what's been going on with you, man?
Dude, things at work have been crazy. So get this. A couple days ago, this lady comes in and she's got this turtle. And it looks like it's got this little hat on its head.
A hat? Like a little fedora?
More like a little blue beanie.
Oh, that's so cute.
Anyway, I was all like, whoa, lady, what's up with your...
Hey guys, the game starts at 6 o'clock, and it's 6 o'clock right now. We only got 5 hours for this session, so time is burning. Let's play. Okay, well, we finished that game early.
Awesome. Now I want to hear about this turtle and its little hat.
Okay guys, I'm gonna jet. Catch y'all next game. Don't you want to hear a story first?
Not really, no. But hey, great game, everybody. Catch you boys around.
These are people who probably excel at online games and convention games and store games where they just show up, they play, that is all that they want and need. On the flip side, other players put all their weight of priority on the social aspect. The group is what they love. The game is really just an excuse to hang out. They don't actually care about playing the game itself, they just want to be hanging out with their friends. And this is where we can have the problem with that one player who can just never seem to remember the rules, or they never put any thought into the game between sessions, or they forget the plot, or they forget what their own character's backstory is. They distract everybody by chit-chatting or playing on the phone, and they're not really concerned about the game at all. To them, the game is just something that's there. They're more concerned about whatever the game meal is going to be, because to them this is a party, and that's just party food, and the game is really just the activity that's the excuse to have some sort of party. These are the players that are more likely to become murder hobos once they get bored, because to them it's just a game. That's not actually going to damage the game or anything like that. In fact, they might even resent the game itself because the game and everybody playing it is actually taking away from their time to hang out with anybody. So if they sabotage the game and burn it to the ground, then that's fine, because that means that they could have more time hanging out with their friends instead of playing this game that seems to be distracting everybody from what's really important. Now, of course, those are the more extreme examples, the examples of when it's the most obvious that there's some sort of problem going on, but most of the time the problem doesn't manifest itself in a way that's that easy to spot. You might have that one player in the group that just seems to be oddly distant from everybody else. They don't seem to be as friendly as everybody else is. Or you could have that player that just never seems fully satisfied with the game, and you keep trying to make it more and more fun for them, but for whatever reason it just never seems to work for them. Maybe you think, is the problem me? Am I doing something wrong because this player isn't invested the way that the rest of us are? When the truth is that they're never ever going to be. Personally, my priorities are about even. The group aspect is critical. I play with my friends or people that I would like to be friends with. Gaming is extremely social for me. But I'm also there to play. The plot and the adventure and the problem solving, that is all critical. We're friends, but we're there for a very specific reason. Now, none of these reasons to play is actually wrong. Whether you put all your priority on one side or the other, or you keep them even, that's perfectly fine. But for a group that's going to last months or even years, it's best that you have some sort of common priorities. They don't need to be exact, but close enough that everybody is happy with that. If you're not familiar with the 5 Geek Social Fallacies, it addresses the common problem when we feel that we must invite all of our friends to participate in some particular event, or that all of your friends are naturally going to get along with each other because they're all your friends. I put a link below for it if you've never read it. It's pretty short and definitely worth the read. The reason that I bring it up here is that players can convince themselves that just because we're all friends that we all have to play together. However, if you're not all enjoying the activity for the same reason as everybody else, that can ultimately cause problems, and if it does, then that means nobody's going to be happy with it. I've been guilty of this. I've played with people that really weren't my friends. Hell, I didn't even like them that much. But they liked the game, the rest of the party, the players seemed to like them, and they were definitely good players. However, because I didn't really like them that much and we didn't mesh that well, that still led to some problems. Or I've played with people who were definitely my friends, they were some of my very close friends, but they clearly didn't care about the game itself that we were playing, which also led to a lot of problems. That one is the worst for me. You know, you've got a friend, you love hanging out with this friend, and they're always excited to come to the session because they're really just wanting to come and hang out. However, they might not actually like playing the game. They might have liked role-playing once, but you know, they don't really like it that much more, but really they're just here to hang out, and now problems have resulted from that because your priorities aren't really matching up. And not just with you or with them, but the problems are manifesting itself in a way that's causing the rest of the group to lose enjoyment in the game. Several years ago, I had a much larger group than I have now, and a couple of my players suffered from the issues of, always being distracted, never being fully invested in the game, difficulty learning the rules or remembering the rules no matter how many times you told them what they were, distracting everybody else with chit-chat, and all the other little problems that I've talked about in this video video so far. So once that game, that campaign wrapped up and we had a big finale and the campaign was over, when I started my new campaign, I didn't invite those players to partake in that one. There was a little drama and hurt feelings about that, and I admit I probably didn't handle that the best. But ultimately our game got better, a lot better. And it was then that I found out that one of the players that was enjoying the game the same way that I was, they'd been considering leaving the group because not everybody in the group is enjoying the game for the same reason. They're always distracted and having all these problems. So I nearly lost one of my players because the other players just weren't invested in the game. Countless groups have imploded from this sort of thing. It doesn't have to be some sort of dramatic case where people are yelling at each other, but just a simple case where the game kind of fizzles out and people kind of wander away. And when you talk to them later on asking why their group dissolved, they're like, well, so-and-so took it too seriously, or so-and-so didn't take it seriously enough. And well, yeah, I mean, it's not a case where somebody was a dick and there was some sort of problem. It could have just simply been the fact that their priorities didn't really mesh right. So in case you're asking yourself, what do I do? Well, I don't really have a simple answer for you. You can always ask everybody what their priorities are. It's a pretty good start, going ahead and opening up communication about it. The problem is when you ask somebody their reason for playing the game, they might not actually know what it is. They might not have ever thought about it before. Or when you ask them, they might not be entirely honest with you. In the case of the player who's really just there to hang out, they might not understand that the game is actually important to the other people around the table. Or they just don't want to out themselves out of fear of losing their hangout time with everybody. So you might still have to figure it out on your own as far as why they're there. And if they aren't in the game for the same reason that you're in the game, is that even a problem? If it's not causing problems and everybody in the group is perfectly happy, you should be aware of it, but don't worry about whatever their reasons are. This is something you should only worry about if it's causing some sort of friction or some sort of problem inside your game. Now, if it is causing problems, can those be solved? Will changing priorities or expectations help, or are they willing to? Can altering the game help? Is there some sort of compromise that can be reached that everybody could be perfectly happy with? Unfortunately, very often, solving the issue is a little bit more complicated than just simply changing the campaign or changing the system or something like that. The problem has to do with the whole motivation as to why everybody is showing up at the game to begin with. And that's not something you can necessarily help somebody with. It's not like there's a problem for them. For them, they're going there for a reason that makes perfect sense. You're coming to the game for another reason that makes perfect sense to you. It's not that either of you are actually wrong, it's just that it's not meshing well. So often the best answer is that you probably shouldn't be playing together. Does it suck? Sure. Can it help? Absolutely. If a player or a game master just wants to play a game with people who are at the game for the same reason that they're there, then they should absolutely play with people who want to be at the game for the same reason as them. So if a whole group wants to get together really just as an excuse to hang out, and tabletop gaming just happens to be their favorite excuse, and no one really cares how well the game goes, so if they get together for a 5-hour session and they only really get 30 minutes worth of playing in and everybody's happy with that, then absolutely go for it. I hope they have fun. And if everybody in a group wants to get together for the serious thing of getting this game done, and they really don't care about their friendships, all they really care about is how well they play together, then I hope they have fun. They're probably going to get more done in a 5-hour session than most of us can do in an 8 because they are locked in the zone the whole time. They are taking this game very seriously. Hope they have fun with it. And if everybody shows up because they're in that middle ground like I am, where both the game and both the social aspect are of equal importance, then sign me up. That's the type of group that I want to play with. But trying to force it to work when it's not going to, that's just a good way to suck the fun out of the game, not just for you, but for everyone else at the table, and nobody wants that. So, in conclusion, there's just some people that you shouldn't play with, and that's nobody's fault. You're just not compatible with one another, or you're looking for different things out of playing. If you just want to hang out with everybody, then just hang out. If you want to play and not really worry about any of the social aspects, then find another group that everybody just wants to play and not do any of the chit chat or anything like that. It sucks, but sometimes just breaking away from those players or those groups is often the best way to make everybody the happiest. Hi, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, like game reviews or how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, players, Excelsior! Man, this video was kind of a downer. Now tell me about that turtle and its little hat.